to Geek Out Weekly, the podcast where we geek out not so strongly on a weekly basis, usually. I just realized that doesn't work when we took a week off last week.
That's okay. We're still weekly.
Yeah, we're weekly. I'm your host, Aadil, and I'm joined by Ben.
Hey.
How you doing, Ben?
Yeah, good, good. All right, getting through the day. Glad I've got something joyful to break it up with.
Joyful, you say? What's that?
Your beautiful
Ha, ha, ha.
face.
And my slightly trimmed beard.
Nice.
Growing in sort of in an odd way that I'm not, like, I've never really had a longer beard, so it's trying to, like, let it grow a bit more, but also figure out how to make it not look so terrible. And I think I got the levels wrong. Got, like, an extra peak here than there.
Yeah, it's hard to shape it and get it sort of symmetrical, which is why I've just cut mine back. I was getting so annoyed with wispiness and how wavy it gets. I just chopped
Yeah,
my shit off.
the other thing I realized was when I was cutting my, like, neckline the way I usually do when it's quite short, and so it was like there was just no depth to the beard because it was cutting too short. So then one of the
Yes.
problems is I now let that grow out, but that's obviously many weeks behind the other bits, and it's like, oh, this is now just tangling into itself, and I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, speaking of not knowing what you're doing, people who started a amusement park didn't seem to know what they were doing, and we are talking about the movie based on them. No, we're talking about Willy's Wonderland, the brand new, released last week, Nicolas Cage film. Which, sorry, I don't get this confused. Is it Willy's Wonderland or Wally's Wonderland?
Yeah, I don't know either. When you hit into IMDb, it comes up saying Wally's Wonderland, and then says previous title Willy's Wonderland. But everything in that film references Willy's Wonderland. Nothing
Yes.
anywhere says Wally's Wonderland.
Yeah, it's very bizarre that IMDb insists that it's not. But yes, so it stars Nicolas Cage and a bunch of actors who I'm not very familiar with, except a couple character actors like the sheriff I recognized from
She's in
similar
tons
roles.
of stuff.
Yeah. Wally's. Oh, weird. Now IMDb says Willy's Wonderland.
Oh, maybe it's just a mistake.
Yeah, that must have been a mistake earlier. Anyway, before we get into the details, this will be a spoilery chat. But the trailer made it seem like it's sort of like a Five Nights at Freddy's the movie.
Yep.
But it's kind of like not. So I mean, have you played any of the Five Nights at Freddy's games?
No, but I've watched my brother play like the first or second one. You know, a long time ago now. But I understand that having watched him and seen trailers for the other ones, the premise being you are in a space watching either monitors or in some of them looking at different areas of a room, and things come towards you to get you. Little animatronic bears and stuffed animal kind of toys, but creepy animatronic ones this time.
Sorry, there's a cat yelling his face off at the door.
It's alright, cats be cats. Sometimes they just scream at you. There he is. A big old cat. So
a very confused cat now.
You put him in his place.
Yeah. Well, I mean, usually I wait for him to wander in and yell in my face for a bit.
It's alright.
Yeah. Yeah. So the premise of Five Nights I've played the first one and the second one, I think. I mean, surprising no one who knows me. I have all 5 or whatever on Steam, but I've played the first one and maybe the second one.
Yep.
And yeah, so the premise is like the first one is the iconic one. It's like it birthed a lot of Let's Plays. Most people, I think, know it via watching someone play it.
Yeah.
And the premise is you've been hired to be a security guard at a disused Chuck E. Cheese type animatronic place, fun restaurant, arcadey. Yeah, so Chuck E. Cheese, Freddy's, Willy's, they're all like. I don't. Did you have many of these in the UK? These like
No, no, none at
restaurant
all. None that
arcades. So
I've
where
been
birthday
to, at
parties
least.
happened. And like they'd have the games where you get the tickets, and then you spend the tickets on shitty prizes that cost way less to buy straight from the dollar store.
Yeah, we don't really have those here. The most we might have got was some employee chump dressing up as Ronald McDonald at
Yeah.
McDonald's, or someone at, what's the other one called, where they do the bender and a bun. What's that place? I forget.
Futurama?
No. But someone wasn't quite a king. What did he even dress up as? I don't know, like a
Burger
beef eater
King?
almost, but like it's not Burger King, it's something else.
Oh.
It's like almost like a diner style place, but they used to do birthday parties as well. Yeah. UK people will remember. I don't. It's gone from my mind, so.
Yeah. So this is yeah, so this is a type of park. It's very clearly riffing on. It was a big franchise, Chuck E. Cheese's, etc. Hence Willy Weasel, right? Chuck E. Cheese being a mouse, by the way. And yeah, and so Find Out at Freddy's is based on that, and the idea that at night these things come alive, and they move mostly when you don't see them.
Yes,
Kind of like
when you're not
the
looking,
angels
yeah.
from Doctor Who. And so the idea is you've got limited power, so you can have like your door locked, or use the security cameras, or turn on a light, and you're trying to balance these to catch the things from moving too close to you. Because if you catch them right at your door, they'll kind of leave and then reset. And so you're trying to survive till 6 in the morning, sunrise. And then you do that for 5 nights. And if you do, you beat the game. But of course, these things like it's basically a whole shit ton of jump scares, and you're minimal. Like you're trying to manage these things, but then it's like, check the vents. There's a face there. Now what do I do? Oh no, I've spent too much time looking at the guy in the vents, and I didn't check the guy at the door. And like you end up getting full on. If they catch you before you catch them, it's like a backlit, jump scare of this creepy animatronic going rah, right? Yep. And so this is clearly the premise of Willy's, right? Which is, we open up on Nicolas Cage driving a sort of iridescent blue Camaro, and he hits a spike strip late in the road and loses all his tires, and then a tow truck just trundles up, picks him up. Doesn't seem, he doesn't really. The guy just sort of keeps talking over him, and takes him. He says, "Hey, we have no internet in this town. We don't take card because the ATMs don't work. We only take cash. You could work it off. I know of a place." And they go to Willy's, and this guy named Tex says, "I own it. I'll gladly pay for your car to be fixed if you just spend the night cleaning up the place in here, because I want to do a new grand opening." And then he goes in, and he basically puts on a Willy's shirt and starts mopping up. And so that's clearly that is Five Nights at Freddy's premise, except with the fact that you're sort of coerced into doing this, or like stumble into doing this. But obviously, very shortly afterwards, Nick Cage notices they move, and it becomes not Five Nights at Freddy's, because you aren't just trying to make sure you don't stop. It's not some tense thriller of is it going to do it, because it becomes just a notoriously amazing bloodbath. Or oil bath, I guess.
Oil bath, definitely an oil bath. Yeah.
But yeah, so I like the idea of doing a familiar to youngins, like latter half millennials and below, premise, but then inverting it immediately where the premise starts. So they give you later in the film, they'll tell you the backstory of why you would be sort of put into the situation. We find out that they con people into doing this by destroying their vehicles consistently.
Yeah, the townsfolk have to send people to Willy's so the animatronics can feed on them, because they were all like serial killers. The employees of Willy's were serial killers, and when they'd started to take families out and, kill them. The police got involved, so all of these killers, and in a satanic ritual, killed themselves. And supposedly their essences or souls or whatever you want to call it were then transported into these human-sized, slightly bigger than human-sized, in some cases, animatronics.
Yeah, which is an interesting premise. We don't find out about that until sort of beginning of Act 3, I would say.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, so that's the idea. So we basically get Nicolas Cage in there. Sorry, I had the synopsis open. Yeah, there we go. Right. So, and then we cut to Liv, which is a Hispanic teenager, who is pouring gasoline on the front of Willy's and is about to light it when the sheriff comes in and arrests her, cuffs her, drives her to a trailer home, and then throws her in, locks her to the radiator.
Yep.
And then they have a "fuck you, bitch, I love you too. Oh, I bet this is a mom-daughter thing."
Yeah.
Type thing. But almost immediately after the sheriff leaves, let's see if we get this. Chris, her friends Chris, Kathy, Aaron, Bob, and Dan come in and rescue her. And there's a lovely scene where all the boys are trying to find the key to the handcuffs in the in the
trailer.
The trailer, yeah. Including Chris looking in the fridge for no reason and then commenting on it, which is a nice piece of writing, because like you do see people ransacking places, looking in dumb places.
Absolutely. And maybe it did, again, bringing it back to that like video gamey kind of feel to it. It did make me think of like a point and click adventure where you're pixel hunting across the screen and they'll come up with ridiculous phrases because you've clicked on something that clearly isn't going to work.
And then so the kids look around, and then meanwhile Kathy just crouches down, pulls a bobby pin out of her hair, and then picks the handcuffs. And then the boys are like, "Oh, okay," and then they leave. And then they're all like, "All right, well, are we gonna do this?" And then Liv is like, "If we're gonna do this, it's gonna, what was it? It's not gonna be for fun. It's gonna be a mission, not a field trip." Which I thought was a very odd line. There's a lot
of odd sort of lines in this, yes, that don't kind of flow or really say anything. Really.
Yeah, and it felt like it. Yeah, it feels like a lot of. It sounds cool at the time, but like this makes you think they've done this type of thing before, and it's very clear shortly after this, and definitely by the end, that no, this is. They've never done other missions. They haven't been training. She's saying, "Be serious. Like,
yes.
We're not doing this for fun." But she says it in a way that's very odd. But yeah, so let's take a break and actually we sort of jump straight into the synopsis. But I forgot to ask, what do you think of the movie? And now that we're sort of hitting a point of, well, the writing's kind of weak in some spots, I thought maybe let's take a step back and then you can just tell me what you thought of it overall first.
I mean, overall, it can probably be summed up very swiftly, in that it's fun, but it has almost zero substance to it. Like, I enjoyed it for what it is. I didn't need to, I'm not delved deeper into why this has happened or want to know anything further about the characters or follow up on the story in any way. It was just, it's fun, it's stupid in a lot of senses. We'll probably talk about Nick Cage's role as the silent protagonist as well, which I thought was a very good move. But yeah, it's just fun nonsense, really.
I think that's a great way of putting it. So I had to bring up the synopsis because even with the few notes, like the notes, first of all, like usually when we do movies, I have like a couple pages of notes, and my notes ended sort of like
Yeah.
here, like, and that was being pretty judicious. Um, and yeah, I don't remember much.
Hmm.
A day and a half later, kind of thing. Because there's not much to remember, as you said. There's not a lot of
Absolutely.
substance, but it was real fun to watch.
Hmm.
Um, so it's not condemning because it does what it's trying to do really well. It's
Hmm.
just that's what it is. I really enjoyed it as well. It's definitely not going to give you depth.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Um,
And I mean, rather than sort of getting back to the synopsis, perhaps. I mean, there's
hmm,
not in terms of the actual story that plays out, as we're alluding to. You kind of get to the second act when stuff starts to happen. When Nicolas
yeah,
Cage is then, or his character is then fighting these animatronics, and the kids break in to Willy's because they were going to set it on fire, but they realise that someone is there, so they want to pull him out before they set it on fire, and it kind of goes wrong, and they all end up inside, right?
yeah.
And it's then just kind of like a bloodbath, essentially, of Nicolas Cage, very, very timely in when he takes these
Well,
animatronic
so
things
so
out, which we can
yeah.
talk
I
about. Hey,
mean, so I
Rido.
was gonna jump into that pretty quick here. The reason I wanted to get through the synopsis is just to get to a couple of the beats that
Hmm.
become sort of cyclical.
Yeah.
So, while he's cleaning, sort of before Liv and them arrive, we get the first animatronic fight scene, which is with the ostrich.
Yes.
And um, it's I think a lot of talk could happen at this moment because so much of the fights are very similar in theme and tempo. They're just in different locations and things.
Yeah.
But it's actually quite tense, and you believe it's a fight scene when, he has his mop, and then he has to break it in two and do like dual two stick fighting, and he's bopping this thing on the head, but you feel like he's hitting the thing.
Hmm.
But you also the filmmakers know how dumb it is because the first hits the thing like crop walks up to him and just is staring at him. And like again, this is where it immediately leaves Five Nights at Freddy's because like the movement's all in your face. It's just an ostrich walking up, and he's been mopping, and he just goes like just it's still on the floor, and he just like at an angle goes boink, like just lets it swing into the guy,
Yeah.
like using the floor as like a fulcrum or whatever. And then it's like ostrich doesn't do anything, so he just does it again, and then it becomes kind of like a shovey thing, and then it's proper like he gets like the ostrich like swings its neck and cuts his cheek, and then
Mm.
and then he's like ends up proper fight scene, ends up breaking it, and it's but like you get a notion of like on set this is Nicolas Cage and a guy in a suit going bonk bonk bonk, and it's ridiculous, but it's all really well thought out angles so that
Hmm.
you kind of
Yes.
after there's that initial interaction, it really feels like it's a fight. I was totally immersed in the fight.
Hmm.
um and it's like he's beating it up, and then he ends up like bashing its face in and then pulling its long ostrich vertebrae out, and like he's just covered in this ichorus oil, like clearly blood surrogate for these
Hmm.
things. uh and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And he's like makes a few exclamations, and at this point he hasn't said a word. He's just he doesn't say what the fuck is this or my god. He just like pokes it until it starts fighting him, and then he just breaks it in half, and then he puts on a fresh Willy shirt, bags the thing, and continues to work.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
And he's got this.
and
He has this routine, doesn't he? And I think Tex says before he goes in, he says,
yeah,
"Oh, it's important to take breaks." So
yes,
Nick Cage's
and he could,
character sets a timer on his watch, I guess,
yeah,
or because I can't imagine he has a phone being in
it
this
was a watch.
situation.
Yeah,
It was a
it
watch.
showed him initially
Um,
set it up.
and as soon as his watch goes off, he takes a break and he goes and gets
Yeah.
one of his cans of pop or
Punch.
punch or yeah, punch. Yes.
It's literally called Punch,
Yep.
and it has a fist logo. Yeah. So the one thing he brings in besides his leather jacket, which he's wearing, is this hemp bag full of pop that he called Punch. That he took out of the backseat, the trunk of his car, the boot. Sorry.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, he just immediately finds the fridge, puts them in, and then every break time he has one of those punches.
Hmm.
Um, And it's very clearly that he is just doing the job of cleaning and taking breaks regularly because that's what he was told, and that's how he gets his car back, and that's it.
Yep.
And everything else is in the way of him doing that.
Yes.
Animatronic comes and attacks him, he'll kill it, then immediately start cleaning it up and himself because that's what he's supposed to do until his watch goes off so he can take one of his frequent breaks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a good cyclical thing that they lean into at other times. Like when he's like later in the film, he's like him and Liv are about to confront something, and his timer goes off, and he's like, just like reaches the pocket and hands her the knife he took off of her earlier, and sort of like with a half shrug, and then goes and drinks his drink. And one of the things he finds when he's cleaning is a Willy's pinball machine in the kitchen, and that becomes his break room activity. And it felt so much like whoever wrote this worked in one of these things, and like that was their break room routine.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
Just like
yeah.
you have your 15-minute break, and you just go to the pinball machine with a pop, and you just lose yourself and pretend you're not in this dead end job, pun mildly intended. And it very much felt like that. And he like gets into it. He's like, the more the night goes by, the more he's like reanimated when he's like playing the game.
Absolutely,
and
yeah,
into it,
yeah.
Which is such a good way of keeping that loop interesting. Because the whole point is, like clockwork, he's going to be taking these breaks in the movie, and then just so we can get moments like the one with him and Liv later on, where it's clearly about to be a fight, and he's like, "Well, I don't want to fight now. It's my break time." But yeah, so he kills the ostrich, and then Liv climbs inside to find him.
Yep.
And while she's in the vents, he gets attacked by the gorilla in the bathroom.
In the bathroom, yes.
So yeah, so basically he like walks into the main area where like the stage where all the animatronics are, and they just start playing their birthday song, and he turns it off, and then he goes to the bathroom, and written on the wall in very weird pseudo blood is like, "It's your birthday, I'm gonna kill you," or something like that. And then he hears a voice saying, "Let's play hide and seek," and all your stall doors in the bathroom close, and on the last one, the gorilla swings from above, which he would have been able to see. It doesn't make sense. He's like, empty stall, empty stall, empty stall. Last stall's a double because it's a full, because it's the handicapped area. But it's still, stalls are only like 5 foot tall or whatever, or 6 foot tall. He kicks it open, nothing's there, and then the gorilla comes from above and like attacks him, and you get this fight scene. And this is the fight scene that I like really noticed how much it was like a man punching a rubber thing, because the lighting was reasonably bright in the bathroom, but they were doing cuts and they were doing some lighting effects or whatever. But it was just like, I just sat there being like, this would have been so fun to watch on set. Like, so fun to watch. Nick Cage just swinging these like actually connecting with his haymakers instead of like play fighting, because he's just punching a rubber thing, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And you can see it like boing, like, and stuff. Like, you could just see the connection. You could see the ripples on the terrible animatronic. It was just, it was a lot of fun to watch.
I think that point for me as well, there was this idea that, and you've seen other people in Willy's getting kind of like pulled away, like right at the start there's a couple in there that had obviously been duped into being there, and they're pulled away and they're killed. At how easily he actually dispatches them. Obviously we have no backstory for his character whatsoever. We've got no idea about his capabilities, and yet we see him kind of take the ostrich down, quite proficiently with a snapped in half broom handle, and then this big animatronic gorilla. And this is a guy in a more cartoony gorilla suit, but also remembering that it is kind of animatronic. So whilst a gorilla's head might be this big, because it's then animatronic, it's kind of this big on top of a person, and it's quite a big thing.
And so it has shoulders to match
it's got
as
big
well.
shoulders, long, big arms. And he just, he gets thrown about a little bit by the gorilla, but he just, again, dispatches it so easily and brutally at the end
like, so
as
this
well.
This is where, like I said, I could see how fun it was to watch the first parts of the fight scene, but I really loved how it ended, because he fucking basically curb stomps him on the
on the
urinal,
urinal.
like places him like mouth half open because he's an animatronic on the urinal, and just boom, stomps him and just breaks the guy's head open. It was like, and then you see all the bloody spray of the oily ichor, etc. Yeah, and then he bags that. But yeah, that was definitely the point where it became very clear what this movie wanted to do, which was that, and basically only that. Just ridiculous. And you're right, like the fight scenes aren't like it doesn't, we don't get a backstory that he's an amazing guy. And we're not seeing in the fight scenes that he's doing anything beyond kind of just punching and kicking and like, oh, I'm grabbing the guy. I know. I'll just throw him into this urinal. Oh, he's there now. I'm gonna stomp him.
Exactly. He's just brawling. He has no sort of fight style. He is just brawling with these things.
That's a great. Yeah, it's instinctual brawling for the most part. And he says nothing and just bags it. And again, this is also the moment when you're like, huh. So then Liv basically comes in, and she's chased by the alligator through the vents where she had come in via the roof, and that puts her into the weird siren, creepiest looking character for my money, which is a more human-like figure of a pixie.
Yeah, it's like a pixie.
Yeah. So thinner and not as cartoony, and then when she does have a mouth, which she clearly didn't originally, and like big eyes, and then her mouth is all these weird, clearly CGI'd in or whatever, but like jaggedy,
big old teeth.
Like black teeth of various angles.
Again, she's the only character I think that's not in sort of a suit. So it's a person
like a head almost.
in a in tights and a top with then this head on top almost, isn't it? Rather than a big suit.
Yeah, and so she fights Liv. Liv pulls this knife that we mentioned, which is like a flick knife, and then the janitor saves her, and then we go to the kitchen and we get this huge info dump that you've sort of already given us here on the podcast of. Turns out this happy-go-lucky fun time place was run by a serial killer who was just trying to train other serial killers, and they were secretly killing people, and the police got wise and they boarded themselves up and killed themselves, and then they ended up, or when it was rebought by Tex, they were still killing people, and then so they boarded the place up again, and but then if they weren't fed victims, they were leaving at night. So it was basically like Five Nights at Freddy, but in town. So people randomly, like at the ice cream shop, at the blah 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 here and there, would just be found dead, and so the townspeople made this deal with them that they would find them victims to keep them sated. And so the couple at the very beginning, in the sort of cold open, were Liv's parents. And they were just amongst other people. We get the story of a bunch of different people getting the similar story from Tex about wanting to reopen, and you could do this. Well, it'll take us some time to fix your car. Like clearly they settled on this spike strip story of the kids stealing the spike strip. But they had other, there's hints at other ways of tricking people.
Just to touch on a point that you made there, and we are shown that Liv was like a victim. She was brought in, her parents were killed, but there's lots of other scenes where kids are harmed and eaten and taken away and stuff. But Liv somehow managed to survive the night. We're not sure how. We're not sure how, but I can see why they wanted to give Liv like a little bit more of a story. She's the first
attachment to the place.
She's the first kind of additional character that we're introduced to, who will be part of this big kind of mess and story kind of within Willy's for a reasonable amount. Unlike the other kids, who she's obviously befriended over the years, who she gets to come and try and help her, who then end up in Willy's. And
like she's clearly, I think that's why the mission, not a field trip. This is personal to her because her parents died there. It's not just trying to get rid of a big bad that's haunting the town. But also that determination. She's also clearly the leader of the pack. Probably because she's bucking against her adoptive mom, the sheriff, and has gone through this trauma and has just a purpose when the rest of them are just kids in the shitty town.
Yeah, yeah.
I liked that it was a diverse-ish cast. Uh, and that they bought, like, they made they were still playing the stereotypes. So there was let's like jump to the little gang there, right? There's generic jock dude, didn't say much. There's the couple, which was the friend, the friend who picked the lock.
Yep.
She's clearly just like the blonde bimbo, sort of dresses quite risque, short skirt, crop top, blows bubble gum, like clearly they're saying trope, right? Because she's blowing bubble gum all the time.
Yep.
And then they've got like an African American dude with like I don't remember, like almost like cornrows, but they're in a, I don't know actually if there's still cornrows with the sort of style of them coming every which way. And they're a couple, and he's the voice of reason, like, no, this is dumb character. Like, we're not going in there. People die there. This is dumb. This is dumb. But also they become the couple who are so horny and turned on by the danger that they go to the kill room. And we know it's the kill room because that's what we got that in the info dump from Liv. And even when she's like, I think was like, she notices the alligators there, and she's like, has that always been there? And like, and he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. And then she's like, I think he's watching us, and she's riding him this entire time.
Yep.
And he's like, yeah, so give him a show. Like, he just clearly wants to get laid or finish getting laid.
The voice of reason, like, until sex is on offer.
Yeah,
like,
which
it's just
I thought was a very clever way of doing both those tropes, because usually they're separate characters.
And it also sort of speaks a bit more to, I think, like the age of the characters. Obviously, these are all played by older people, probably in their early 20s. But I would think
they're supposed to be like 16,
meant to be 16, 18 kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, because like they're surprised one of them smokes weed.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Like I felt like that was a like almost an infantilizing, not just you're a square, but like it's 2021. Like even if you're not into it, you've probably tried it before at this point. I think with all the places it's legal, etc. You got Chris, who's obsessed with Liv and is just her puppy dog and does whatever she says, and like will support her no matter what. And he's the one who, when she says I'm going in there, he's like, yeah, guys, she's going in there. But also when he hears her scream, he's immediately like, we have to go there in there and save her.
Yep.
And that's what gets all the kids in there, because the roof basically collapses and they all fall into the ball pit. Which was a nice touch.
Yep. A soft landing for them, so they could be brutally taken apart
murdered later. Yeah. And I had noted, or you're seeing them like a ball pit in the restaurant area. That's just not how this thing would be designed. And I was like, oh, it's because they want them in the same room as all the animatronics.
Yep.
Gotcha. It was just really dumb. I was like, really? Movie? Like, oh, I get it. It just ended up being Chekhov's ball pit. Like,
yes,
just like, this is going
to
be like this. No one would have designed this unless the ball pit was integral at some point. And then you've got the other two guys, like I said, the sort of more nerdy looking African American guy who didn't have many lines at all. And then the like jock guy in that he was he sort of gave his role seemed to be give Chris a hard time.
Yes, yeah.
And posture about things. But he had so few lines. I wouldn't be surprised if on the cutting room floor he had a lot more lines that played into that trope, because it very much was. It was very clear that all these characters, including Liv, she's the badass final girl, right? Like, that's her trope. Spoiler alert, she survives. But yeah, so it was very clear that they were doing these tropes.
Yes, and again, it's interesting that when the killing starts, the first person to go, quite often in these films, is the posturing jock kind of guy. More often in a lot of these films, he's bigger and stockier, and he's a football player, or that kind of thing. And in this, even without a lot of lines, he is the first to kind of go. So.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a little. I think often it's that or the person of color, and I thought they like played both tropes in the right order because shortly after that the two black guys die
Yes.
basically.
Yeah.
Um, but in between we also get like Kathy dying and this other guy dying first. So it like when you're playing into those tropes, but they're problematic, you need to make sure you aren't just doing the problematic thing. And I was like, really, they killed them that soon? But then almost all the kids die really quickly, except for
Yeah. Yeah.
Chris is the one that lasts a bit longer, and the rest are it's pretty much just this like Act Two is like the kids come in, they all die, um, and then the townspeople discover things, and we move into Act Three. But yeah, so I thought like it made up for the fact that it was pretty much like jock guy, black guy, and then the girl, and then Chris, because it was like all within like 10 minutes maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, you're right, like so they're definitely were doing tropes, and that included order of death and type of death, like the surprise from behind, even though they know Willy's is haunted, and apparently Liv saw the animatronic kill people, but she was a child. Like you get the sense that everyone knows something weird's about it, and people go missing, but they don't really know or believe that it's actually robots, right? But yeah, so the first guy dies because they're in the room, and then the knight character just fucking stabs him.
Just runs him through the sword. It's a very large sword as well.
It's a very large sword, yeah. And
look, again, we're saying all of these different kinds of characters about the knight, the pixie, Willy, Weasel. Like there's I don't know what it is, like an octopus kind of thing with the big tongue. It's not an octopus with arms. What is it?
I don't know. It's the one that like tries to charm Chris.
Yeah, yeah. But it's such a weird mix of things. And, you know, generally, from what I know of kind of like American culture and seeing it in other, you know, shows and touch points for other things, they're generally themed, right? These places, they're generally themed about something. So I guess like Chuck E. Cheese would be hanging out with all of his animal buddies.
Oh, Cammy Chameleon.
Oh, it's a chameleon. Yes, okay, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, a chameleon, a knight, a pixie, a weasel, a gorilla. Like they just grabbed things out of nowhere, which I think is very funny. It being here is one of these kinds of restaurants, but we've got no theme. It's just a bunch of stuff. Come and hang out.
So that was one of the production notes I read. Was originally, let's see if I can get these right. In the original script, it was Barry Bear, Douglas Dog, Pirate Pete, Polly Penguin, and Regina Rabbit.
Okay.
So kind of more like
kid-friendly
ish. But then it was Gus Gorilla, Artie Alligator, Nighty Night, Tito Turtle, and Cammy Chameleon replaced all of those.
Right.
So then the Pixie was always there. And obviously the Weasel and the Ostrich. Apparently. But yeah, I like that it's so ragtag. I think that what they realized is by not like, because I think the dog, the bear, especially, and the weasel all would look very similar in these dark fight scenes. And actually, what we got like the fight scene when Nicolas Cage kills the gator, because there's the gator's the one that kills the couple.
Yes.
And then when
he's like feasting on them, isn't he?
Yeah. When Nicolas Cage and Liv sort of find them, he like does the jaw ripping thing because that's what like that he's like it tries to bite him and he's like, I'm holding onto it. It's like, oh, but this is an animatronic, so it doesn't have the jaw power of an alligator, so I can just, and then he gets sprayed with the ichor. Like,
yes, yeah, and I imagine some of those changes between the original kind of animatronics they were thinking about as well. Like, how do you have that hook to their death, because the chameleon has a long tongue and shoots that out at people. So Nicolas Cage gets this big flexible pipe to sort of strangle it with. It rips the crocodile's crocodile rips its mouth open. It stabs the knight, it chops the knight's head off with the sword. You know, it uses their own sort of weapons and their means of killing people on them themselves. So yes, I guess that in the original kind of looks like, well, it's a bear, so it's just a big bear.
I assume it was just kind of like, I wouldn't be surprised if the script was just like fight scene, and then in like rewrites and productions, like, oh, we can actually do a theme here and make them a little more poetic in how he responds to them.
Yes.
Because like the ostrich, like the gorilla, he brutally kills like a gorilla was trying to brutally hit him, but the ostrich was kind of just a fight.
Mm-hmm.
But so one thing I think, yeah, so he sort of just carves his way through. Um, then but Chris, who hasn't quite died yet, calls 911, and the sheriff has called for backup from a local state trooper
Yeah.
because she's worried about something happening tonight. But she's like, it's very odd. So this is one of those disconnect moments, right? So she's like, he's like, you like, this town is tiny. Why do you need backup tonight of all nights? And she's like, and then we're just sitting around, and she's like, just don't worry about it and collect your double overtime. And then the phone rings and it's Chris, and he's like, we invaded we went into Willy's, and she's like, well, you make your bed, you lie in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he calls again and says, Liv's in here and in trouble. That's why we came in. And she's like, fuck my daughter, right? And then she's like, but then it's like, okay, so if you were worried about something happening at Willy's, you needed backup, but actually you weren't worried about something happening at Willy's because you weren't answering the phone.
Yeah, she mentions,
like, I didn't know why she called for the backup at all.
She mentions a curfew as well. So I guess that the town has then this idea that once someone is put into Willy's, that the rest of the town is under curfew, that no one leaves their houses, they don't go outside. The thing happens at Willy's with whatever victims they put in, and then the town kind of goes back to normal for however long that cycle kind of happens.
Yeah.
But we're not sort of treated to any additional exposition in terms of this is something she always calls for backup just in case they need to round people up in different locations to send them back home. Whether this is sort of a new thing, like, and why she felt the need to do it. Yeah, we're apart from placing another person at the end or towards in the third act to remove Liv from the situation, there's no reason for him.
Yeah, it felt very awkward. Like, yeah, like you said. So let's put ourselves in the sheriff's point of view, right? She's like, okay, Liv was trying to burn the place down. I cuffed her to the radiator, then I went on my shift.
Yep.
So she doesn't know the kids are trying to do this. She knows Liv has this idea, but it doesn't seem like any indication the kids generally have this idea. And Liv is, according to her knowledge, trapped. So then the curfew doesn't make sense because it's not a concerted kid thing she's trying to catch before it happens.
Yes.
And if it wasn't to do with, like, if it was just a regular night of curfew, then why would they just be sitting by the phone and not patrolling? It doesn't make sense, right? It's just getting another body to deal with Liv for a few scenes.
Yep.
And also I think to facilitate the, okay, the Liv's in trouble and now we got to go, and on the drive over, that's where we get the town making the deal about the sacrifices.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. She has someone to tell that to. Yeah.
So yeah,
but again, she brings this guy in. Why is she giving him this story?
Yeah,
just be like, no, we just got to go. Come on.
Yeah, it felt really weird, and he's too calm.
Yeah.
Like he takes it in stride, like, oh yeah, satanic animatronics. Satanimatronics.
Yeah, rather than being like, right, I think we need to call for much more backup to come and deal with all of you people.
Or, you're a fucking lunatic. What do you mean satanimatronics? This is insane. Right? So they get there, and Lund sees that a couple of them are dead, but she can't process that this might be a way out of their problem.
Yes, yeah.
Which I think was it's very obstinate, but also a very human. Nope, this is what's keeping things safe. I just need to make sure this deal is on the table. I thought it was really well played because it could easily feel forced and be like, well, this is dumb. But it felt like I could see this character having that tunnel vision.
Yes, definitely.
So then she gets dude guy, state trooper, to cuff Liv and take her back to the station and throw her in a cell. And meanwhile, she ties. I thought it was cuffs, but it turns out it must have been a zip tie
Mhm.
for the janitor, Nick Cage's character, behind his back. And then she's like, "I'm sorry, you just had to die," etc. And then like leaves, and she's now parks. She's in the parked truck, just watching the door to make sure that nothing else funny happens, and basically is there watching overnight. Um, and then so then I can't remember the order, but basically, the turtle escaped and was hiding in the car, and attacks them.
It attacks Liv
Uh,
and the state trooper. Yeah.
and the state trooper, yeah, and so they're like X miles away when she pulls a shotgun on him. That doesn't work, but then kind of like also just sort of brawl beats him.
Yeah, and again, after this sort of turtle character, animatronic has pulled the state trooper out of the car and inflicted enough damage on him that he dies.
Well, he's not quite dead, right? Because you can see his breath.
Yeah, I
He's
don't
just
know
like,
whether that was intentional or not, though.
I
It's
think it
just a
was
very
just by the way
cold
the lighting
night.
was. Yeah, but yeah, but he was clearly out of commission.
Yes, yes, and yeah, Liv just beats this turtle character down by continually hitting it in where its genitalia would be if it was a human,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
was a bit strange. And there's the occasional moment in this where these animatronics almost plead for their lives as well, which I think is it's kind of a nice touch to say it's not just a robot, right? This isn't just an animatronic. We are
It's got a
leaning
soul
into
in
the
it, yeah.
idea that it has got a person kind of within it doing this. So the gorilla says a couple of things. The turtle, he just keeps just saying no more please, no more please, when she's battering him and stuff. So there's a few sort of moments like that which do pull you into that kind of direction. But yeah, again, just dispatched it pretty swiftly.
Handily.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she heads off, and it's like, but the thing is, she doesn't beat it to death. You don't have that like Ichor blow
True.
up.
Yes. Yeah.
And she just like, okay, it's not coming at me. I'm gonna go back to Willy's. And then we cut to Nick Cage standing there, and then Cammy Chameleon, the one with the tongue, and Siren Sarah, I think it is, with the pixie. One of them says, "How about a threesome?" And then they're both like there to attack him. And he kind of just owns them.
Yeah.
But again, just beats them, and like I like that his hands are behind his back, and he's like he does like kind of like the James Bond Russian like female villain kill of like straddling her face and suffocating her.
Yeah. Yeah. Squeezing in between the thighs, sort of thing.
Yeah, and until she stops struggling, and you have like, and again, because she's just a face with a human body, when her like legs are kicking, it's like actual. It feels more visceral.
Yeah.
It's like that's someone being. You can't see the like the part of her that shows she's clearly a robot is being covered by him. So it's just this like, you get, even though it's not, it's a nice change of pace of feeling like well cut punching and like viscera, making you feel in the scene, to this being like a very different way of feeling like this thing is dying. It's a thing that is dying. It's not just turning off a machine. Then what does he do? He swaps shirts, bags the two more robots, and then he opens the door to throws the bag in the dumpster, and then the sheriff wakes up, drags him back in. And again, now it's like just Willy. He's the last one, as far as we know, right? Like, and she sees the concert room is empty except for Willy, and she starts yelling, or no, the concert room's empty. Willy's nowhere to be seen.
Yes.
And she's yelling, "Come get him! Come get him! I'm so sorry this screwed up." Like just in desperation to protect her town. And then Willy shows up behind her, and she like does a half back like look, and is surprised. And with one swipe, he tears her in two pieces. Brilliant.
Just rips her in half from the waist up. Yeah.
It's great. And then Nick Cage like stares at him, and then just snaps the zip tie, which he could have done in the previous 2-on-1 fight. It's like, what? Yeah, and then they have a fight scene, which was okay. It's pretty brawly, and I like that it didn't make it any different than the other ones.
It didn't. I mean, he did take the janitor character did take more of a beating, I think, from Willy.
Yes.
He's obviously shown a little bit to be more powerful. He's bigger.
Yeah.
He's sort of like a head taller than any of the other ones as well.
Good reach.
A good, big sort of weaselly arms, which have obviously
Yeah.
got kind of claws on the end because you get a lot of swipes and a lot of 3 claw mark
Gashes,
rips
yeah.
along the t-shirts and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, so you took damage, and like earlier in the film we kind of glossed over this, but every time he was injured, which was only basically the first couple fights, he was using duct tape to cover things up.
yes,
And which I thought was a nice touch of janitor. That's what I have around.
yeah.
But yeah, so he gets beat up, but like it wasn't outside of being hit more, it was just a brawl. Another brawl, right? It just was more of a back and forth brawl. But it wasn't like the Weasel was again this amazing like I think the point is like Willy or whoever the original guy was like an evil person who was training people to be evil, and that his evil wasn't even when he became supernatural. He was just still like
Just a normal guy who killed people
a
rather
guy.
than any
Yeah.
kind of he doesn't have any sort of like fighting ability.
Yeah, it's not like he's like
it's like
somehow
if I got in a big suit that had giant claws and I went to fight someone, I'm like, well,
I'll just swipe at you.
swipe at them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and so we lose. Willy dies via decapitation of ripping, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then we basically cut to the morning, and it's a nice touch. So the mechanic brings squeals and donuts in the car, and he reveals that he's handing it off to Tex as like part of their deal.
Yep.
Which doesn't really make sense because I don't know what the dude's getting out of this.
I guess he got paid to fix it. I guess.
Yeah, it's unclear, but he's just like another one for your collection, and then the janitor like they open the door and everything's clean, and there's no animatronics, and everything's like the whole place is clean. They're like, what the fuck? And then like Nicolas Cage just opens his hand for the keys, and they're like I guess.
Yep.
And then that's when Liv like wanders up.
Well, they have they have the realization, don't they? Tex and the mechanic, they have kind of like the realization themselves that it's over.
Yeah.
And yeah, that they can do something else. And he's like, oh, maybe I will open it up again. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to go back a second. The final fight scene, Nicolas Cage prepares for it by grabbing his two mop sticks, taping them together, and then putting all his spare cans into the hemp bag. And then he basically just has a sack of oranges and a stick, right?
Yep.
Like he's just fucking whatever. And you could see him like walloping with these cans. I thought for sure one would break or something, and they might show, but no punch is wasted. But it's literally a bag of punch, which I thought was a nice touch. But yeah, he then leaves with his bag of punch, and that's when Liv shows up. And again, I see the trope of I guess they're escaping together.
Yep.
I didn't find it that great, and there was like some male gazy camera panning, which was awkward because, like you said earlier, she's like, it seems like they're pitching these kids as 16, 17, maybe 18, but also Nicolas Cage is very old at this point.
Yes.
And I think it helps that this janitor character is kind of a little beaten up looking, like a little more bags under the eyes, especially because he's just brawling. But then for him to just like take this girl.
Well, he doesn't, does he? He gives he kind of like looks at her and then gets in the car, and she just sort of gets in with him.
I feel like it's towing a line there that like it's trying to play to the trope of and then the girl goes away with the hero sort of thing. But it felt weird, I think, just because of the age disparity and the fact that one thing we've totally glossed over, which I didn't mean to, but you mentioned earlier, Nicolas Cage doesn't speak in this movie.
Yes.
We forgot to say that earlier. You mentioned it, and we were gonna run around to it. But yeah, and I think that's one of the best decisions of this film.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
It's so good, and he's one of the few actors who I'm pretty sure that's what, because this is a small film, right? I'm pretty sure that's why he took the role, not just money, because I doubt they could have paid him that much. But like, what an interesting acting challenge! Like,
yeah,
and it's not he's mute because he yells a lot. like in the fights he's yelling
And
and like
expresses, yeah,
'cause-
yeah.
yeah, very much like brawling, yelling, or yelling in pain. He just doesn't talk outside of that at all. The info dump of Liv, um, she's like, you gonna say anything? Nothing.
Mm.
The right, the last break, he like dances along and kind of cheers to himself, which is a great little montage moment of his break, and he's like totally into it. Like that loop of him getting more and more into the pinball game ends with this like literally like as the song ends, he like goes yeah and like punches the air as if he was hearing the song. Stuff like that is really good. It shows that he has like character has shows more emotion without ever talking.
Mm.
And like he like clearly goes like ah, after the punch. Stuff like that is just, I thought, so well done. And like you said at the final scene, he just kind of like gets in the car, and then his response is like, "I guess you're in the car now," and then he cracks the punch, and then goes to drink it, and then looks at her, and then gives it to her. And I felt like that helped it because it's a little more like not paternalistic, but paternal, like
Yeah.
in the sense of like you might need some like here have it. And then we cut to them driving off, and we never see them, sort of again.
Well, we
But
see
I
them for
did
one
find it
more.
a
So we do
little-
see them for one more scene.
Oh, right. Sorry, yeah, because the turtle's not dead.
The turtle who lived didn't kill is not dead, but very much is when they run him down.
Yeah,
And
they
don't
specifically the road.
don't specifically run him down. Don't chase him down. He's just walking up the road. They're coming the other way, and
they just keep
smash
going.
into him and keep going.
Yeah.
And there's one more scene with Tex and the mechanic,
Yeah.
as well. That the pixie somehow survived and climbs out of the
'cause she was-
dumpster.
Yeah, she seemed kind of half
Yeah.
like beat up, but like not
Very
dead.
beat up.
Yeah.
And then she explodes the car that Tex and the mechanic get into, exploding herself in the
Yeah.
in the same explosion, and it kind of neatly ties the story up. Like there are no
everyone's dead.
survivors apart
Yeah.
from Nick Cage and Liv, and they are driving off into the sunsets. Like
Yeah.
everyone else who has some kind of involvement within this is now gone.
Also, so like that scene, she had seen the gas cans lying around, and she like
Oh, yes.
poured more
Yeah.
on. She poured it on their car, which is why their car explodes
Mhm.
when she lights it, because she's like just basically on the trunk and just is like, "It's your birthday" or whatever she
Yeah,
says.
I thought she was going to be in the car, but
Yeah, I did too, but yeah, and you think that too because they see her in the rear view, but she's just
Yes.
through the back screen. So she blows it up, but then when it cuts to Nicolas Cage driving off, you see a huge fire in the back, and you get the sense that the whole building exploded after the car.
You see fire in his glasses.
his
He's
sunglasses.
driving the other way. It's like reflected in his sunglasses.
It's like reflected from the. It must like it's like you do the math, and you're like, so behind him it exploded, and the explosion's hitting the rearview mirror, which is then hitting his sunglasses in order for this to make sense, and it's like such a hilariously complicated, dumb, amazing shot.
Yep.
Yeah. It's very good. But yeah, so performance-wise, I mean, most people are playing tropes, so it's hard to tell, and how much of it the wooden acting is wooden on purpose. I thought Liv, who had the most to say, was pretty solid.
Yeah.
They clearly like cast a lead, like an actor of a certain caliber. The sheriff was also very good. She was very believable in the bits that needed to be, like her desperation, her calling out for Willy. You kind of felt like you got where her position was. The two dudes who set things up but were kind of killed comically were more tropey, and I think that made sense.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's hard, yeah. And of course, Nicolas Cage just like for a 0 words role, just fucking owned the entire movie. And almost all of the deaths were from him just punching and kicking.
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was very good. If I didn't have that synopsis, I think I wouldn't have been able to say much as far as what happened,
That's
except
fair.
for like some cool deaths. I would have been like, I would have talked about how the fight scenes felt visceral, despite being a guy in punching him, and that there were certain scenes where they wanted you to remember that this was filmed. It felt like. And it would have been funny to see, while also making you feel like these things were actually happening.
Yeah, and they did. We did touch on it a little bit earlier, but the kind of the way that they were choreographed and shot, those camera angles,
Yeah.
they also threw in a few different effects. Like there's a lot of lens flare
Yeah.
in some of these kind of cutting shots between scenes. So I can't remember which animatronic he's fighting, but it shows him kind of like moving, and there's lots of lens flare coming in when he's moving, and then it will be a slightly darker but purposefully kind of lit scene of him wailing on the thing, and then lens flare in air, in not quite a transition sort of scene, but when there's movement or something else, and you don't need to focus on anything really, they'll kind of throw this little effect in, and I thought it was, whilst it wasn't necessarily needed, it's a nice little touch just to give you a slightly different focus, I think.
Yeah.
And very much pulls it a bit more into that kind of actiony, like this is the action scene now. We're very much giving you effects and things to show that this is the action and this is what's going to be going on.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the other scenes were quite still. So when
I was going to say that's a really good.
Yeah, they're very still. And then there's a few shots cut together very quickly after a fight where he is cleaning rapidly, and it will be like lots of very specific close-up shots of his hand just scrubbing something or spraying something.
Yeah.
And they use that sense of motion and that speed in the editing and the cuts versus the slower still scenes very well to give you that sense of kind of motion, the passage of time, but also how frantic things are as well. And I think it's edited very well to set the tone of each of those scenes.
Yeah, I think you're bang on with that. It's edited and the cinematography is done so well because the dynamic scenes are either montages of cleaning, which are done where the cuts are very like almost metronomically timed. Like it's very much like
they are
this scrub for like this shot of him cleaning for X seconds, then a new shot of him cleaning also for X seconds, right? And you get the sense that it's just the time is passing, and then we cut to him on a break.
Yeah.
And we have several moments in the film of these montages of him cleaning, then going over on a break, and the break is similarly like interspersed shots of him at various parts of his break, and then it's over, and then he goes back to cleaning or wandering or fighting. But the fight scenes are frenetically cut, right? It's like bash bash cut, bash 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 cut. Like you don't know when it'll cut next, but you know it'll be pretty frequent cuts between different angles of the fight. Yeah, that's a really good observation. And you're right. So it's like, and then the rest of the film, especially when people are wandering or talking, is like maybe a slow pan of people walking through a room.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's almost all static shots of just people talking and the people doing all the dynamics. And so the editing and the filming is very much like in the back seat until it needs to either show he's rolling through or something really like intense is happening, and that makes you double down on the intensity. Yep. Cool. Do you have any other thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I think I just finish as I started by saying it's fun nonsense. It's where we've covered a couple of, say, more sort of B-movie style films like Psycho Goreman or something. It's very sort of genre specific, and you like that kind of film if you enjoy that kind of genre, or you enjoy B-movies and that sort of thing. Where I think with this, it's very, very easy to watch. And
even if you don't know all these tropes that it's playing in, you don't really need to.
No, completely. You could just spend a very enjoyable hour and a half and just go, that was just fun. You don't need to be invested. You don't need to be involved. It is just a good little watch.
Yeah, and it washes over you, like you said near the beginning. It's not a movie that you need to really pay much attention to, and there's not a lot that you can sort of pay attention to outside of what's happening in the moment, and that's great. It would be a good hangover movie.
Yeah, definitely.
Tune in and out of it. It's like that type of movie where it's just fun to watch, easy to watch, entertaining. The fight scenes are ridiculous, but also brutal. Like that's probably the highlight of the film, besides Nicolas Cage's acting and like the funny premise is like it's that it does toe the line between ridiculous men fighting puppets and feeling like they're the real fights. And I
Yes.
think that's what sells most of it, like is that they managed to, with that editing, with that filming, with the commitment by the actors, like really sell that this is a dangerous position,
Yeah.
while also never making you feel like it's not like they gave CGI powers to anyone really, which I think is
Yes.
part. Like the one superpower is the chameleon's tongue that wraps around Chris's head when he's not suspecting it, and it's just literally like another piece of animatronics puppetry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think So I mean, that's all I need to say as well. It's a recommend to me, from me. It's a recommend from Ben.
Yep.
Great. So that's been us for this week. It's Tuesday today. Normally I'm doing first looks, but we did a bit of a scheduling shakeup. But Geek Out Weekly is filmed live before an internet audience on Mondays at noon British Standard Time. The other main podcast of the network is, of course, Tanked Up, the podcast all about craft beer and video games, which is 8 o'clock British Standard Time, Wednesdays at noon.
Tuesdays Tanked Up. Tuesdays.
No, I was saying Tuesdays is 8, but then Wednesdays at noon, you do your thing.
Yes.
I was on your thing.
Yes. Well, our thing now.
Our thing,
of having a look at maybe some multiplayer games, seeing what we can kind of play together for a reasonable lunch break. A couple of hours or an hour sort of thing. At the moment, we're playing Destiny 2. We're going to continue that tomorrow. Maybe dive into some PvP stuff, which is something we haven't explored, or I haven't explored at least, with you.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that tomorrow, and then maybe move on to something else, a new game the week after.
And then on Fridays at 10:30, Radari, I believe he might be coming back this week because he had to take a couple weeks off, but he does the Insomnia stream, which is a game of his choice late at night. So one of our few evening spots. Other than that, you can catch us at articles, VODs, podcasts at outoflives.net. Our YouTube channel is Out of Lives Network. Just search that. You can follow us at Out of Lives Net on Twitter. Email the podcast at podcast@outoflives.net, and catch Ben at Nova_47, myself at the Omniarch, and that I think is all the plugging.
Yes.
So this has been us for another week. I've been Aadil.
I'm always Ben.
Bye.
See ya.
www.outoflives.net